All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's segment of the Faculty Lecture Series. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Jessica Lardy, professor and director here, and I coordinate the series. So thanks for attending tonight's lecture. Keep an eye out for upcoming lectures that I send out every week, or you can grab a RAT card on the way out. Next lecture is tomorrow, featuring Chelsea Oden of music. So this evening's event is presented by Dr. Mark Manzanares from the School of Counselor Education. Dr. Manzanares has been a counselor educator for 28 years and was instrumental in the development of one of the largest public CACREP accredited online programs. Dr. Manzanares has over 20 years of experience with instructional technology and distance learning practices. He's served as an instructional technologist, professor, and department chair, and is currently serving as the undergraduate coordinator of the university's online programs. Within the discipline, Dr. Manzanares serves as the chair of the Association of Counselor Education and Supervision, Professional Development, in the Webinar Committee, and the Professional Development Continuing Education Coordinator for ACES, and currently serving on the ACES AI Task Force. Tonight's lecture is titled AI in Higher Education, Ally or Adversary, Navigating Ethical Challenges and Solutions. And in his words, the rise of artificial intelligence in higher education is transforming the way institutions operate, offering both exciting opportunities and complex ethical challenges. This lecture will dive into the critical principles of accountability, transparency, and competence as they relate to AI integration in educational settings. Participants will explore ethical guidelines, including those from the AAUP and the AAC&U and the American Counseling Association, and also the National Board for Certified Counselors, gaining actionable insights into how these frameworks can guide responsible AI use. Real-world examples will highlight the nuances of ethical decision-making and the importance of staying ahead in potential challenges. Key topics will include navigating academic integrity, enhancing training opportunities, and managing AI applications in the classroom and beyond. Through engaging discussions and interactive case studies, attendees will identify risks, explore solutions, and leave with practical strategies to address ethical dilemmas effectively. The lecture is designed to equip higher education professionals with the tools they'll need to embrace AI while maintaining the integrity and quality of educational practices. So join us to discover how to turn ethical challenges into opportunities for growth and innovation. So help me in welcoming Dr. Manzanares.
Well, welcome. I didn't know I wrote that, so I hope I'm able to do everything that it said. So I really do appreciate you being here. I want to make a few disclosures, first of all. Anything and everything I say today, I'm talking about the experiences that I've had with AI. I'm on a task force with our national organization for counselor education and an AI task force. I've been to several trainings, whether at the COLT conference, which is a Colorado technology conference at CU Boulder that happens every August. And I encourage you, if you have a chance to go, to really go to it. It's a day and a half, and it really is a really good conference in terms of learning the newest technologies that are out there. AI started to come around the COLT conference, several years ago into higher education, and at first, I'll be honest, I was like a lot of other folks out there. Okay, AI, what's it going to do? Is it going to take over our world? It reminded me of a book I read by Dean Koontz. I can't remember the title of the book, but in this book, all the characters the AI started to take over, and when they started typing on their keyboards, the keyboards attached to them, and it just took them all over. And it was, that was the images that we were getting about AI. But my disclosure basically is this. Anything I say here today is not necessarily related to Adams State, related to my belief systems of where Adams State should go, where Adams State is going. I do know that there's some policies that are being developed in regard to it, so I'm going to give you the general understanding of what we're seeing out there in higher ed, at least in the areas that I'm in and the programs and presentations that I go to, that could be helpful even as we're developing these policies and we're developing these processes here at Adams. So just want to make that sure that you're not hearing, oh, Mark's from Adams State, and this is where Adams State is going. I'm going to be sharing with you some of the technologies that we're using in counselor education that can be used in education. And then we're going to be talking about the perils and pitfalls of using those technologies. I want to tell you that I am very pro AI. I support the AI initiative and the process as long as it's done right. And when we look at this, it takes me back to that old 1980s movie of Gremlins, where the person who had the gremlin or the mogwai handed it to the kids in the movie and said, with mogwai comes much responsibility. And all I can think about is when we start looking at AI is the same way. And with AI comes great responsibility and what we have to look at. Otherwise, if we're not doing it mindfully, we can actually start to ask ourselves, what's going to happen next? If we don't do it within guidelines, within boundaries, what's going to happen next? Are we going to start creating, if anyone knows, these little pups are the pups that were generated from DNA. Scientists took an extinct animal, took the DNA from it, and created I think they're called ding wolves, something like that. Dire, okay. And then they actually, scientists said, okay, we won't create a woolly mammoth, but we'll make everybody feel comfortable with what we're doing, so we'll turn a woolly mouse. So they took the DNA from a woolly mammoth and altered it to work with a mouse, and they came out with the woolly mouse. So what's going to be next? They're going like, oh, everyone loved them. They're so cuddly, so one day you might see the woolly mammoth. That's what happens when you start to, sciences can be great, but it can be challenging too. And as higher education, we can't guarantee what's going to happen in the world of AI, but what we can do is be mindful of how we're doing it, integrating it, and supporting for student success around it. So I want this presentation to be interactive. I want you to be able to ask questions about it. Before it started, and I was testing some of my technologies to make sure it was going to work today, it already generated a little bit and some thoughts, aha, worries, considerations, those types of things. This is a huge topic. This could be discussed for hours. We have about 15 minutes that we can be able to do this in. So I'm going to just kind of go over some key pieces to it, and hopefully we can get through. The first thing we want to do is defining what AI is. The term artificial intelligence means a machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. That came from the National Artificial Intelligence Act of 2020. So that's something you just need to, when we understand what is AI. The next thing that we're going to be looking at here is we're going to kind of take it in four ways. We're going to talk a little bit about the background of not only AI, but technology and instructional technology. You heard my bio. My bio goes back to 1989 is when I started working here at Adams State. I was a recruiter, and I recruited here at our admissions office up until 1996 when I moved over into teaching. But I was always a technology type person. I always tell folks that I was kind of the techie. At the time, the president at the time was Tom Gilmore. And Tom Gilmore he had a nickname for me called Skeeter. And he used to call me a little mosquito because every time I walked into his office, he knew I was going to bleed him for something. And it had to do with some kind of money for some kind of technology. And early in the 90s, it was probably in 1990, 91, as I started in this venture, I started to understand computers a little bit more and what was coming out. And the first computer with a mouse. Some of you are like, a computer didn't have a mouse or a touchpad? And it didn't. Everything was done by keystrokes. And we brought in the first computer that had a mouse, and the admin assistant at the time didn't want to use the mouse, was afraid of it, thought it was just a gimmick, and so she took the mouse and put it behind the monitor, and we're not talking flat panel monitors, we're talking big old monitors. Put it behind the monitors and kept doing the keystrokes. And so that's the fear of that new technology. And then in 1996, maybe a little bit slightly before that, email came around. In order for us to communicate on this campus, we used to send out memos, and it would be a one-page. You type the memo, you put it in the interoffice mail, it'd go out to everybody, and that's how we would be able to communicate, unless you went across campus to a meeting. And email started to come out, and we had a dean on this campus that actually says, email is a fad, I'm not going to use it, it's going away. And for the longest time would not use that email. And we had faculty that were told by their deans, you're going to either use it or you're going to need to move on. That was the behavior around it. Well, lo and behold, email has not disappeared, and technology just keeps going on. As I said, I started here a while back. When I got my PhD is that I'm a counselor educator, but my PhD is in adult learning theory and distance learning technologies. And so it deals with instructional technology and distance learning technologies. And one of the first things that they always used to tell us in class is anything an instructor uses in their class to help them is considered instructional technology. And so you have, whether it's a pencil or whether it's even a device that moves your slides, those are instructional technology, and instructional technologists should be able to support faculty in those types of technologies. Even when you go back to the history of technology, the history of technology comes in the sense, and I think it's in some of the evolution, but the history of technology goes back to the first pencil. And when the first pencil was around, and the first found pencil was in about 1632, 1635. They found a pencil in a house, and it was a wood-wrapped graphite pencil. And then in 1795, the first official pencil was invented, where a person took graphite, rolled it in clay, and created that first pencil. That's the first instructional technology that was ever used. And then it just keeps going on. So we could just talk about the different types of technology that are available out there. Well, we come now to here. If you look at, and I'll go back, because what we're going to be talking about in here is the history and the background. We're going to talk about some examples of the technology. With this could be, just some of the presentations I've gone into and the types of AI technology out there. The list is endless, and we just don't have the time to do it. So I'm going to give you the major pieces, whether they're chat box like AI, Gemini, simulators, like one of the simulators that we use that is used in counselor education, not necessarily here at Adams, but in counselor ed. Translator aids, I'll show you how you can take a video and translate it into a language. So I'll show you that. And then presentation tools, being able to take, let's say, a PDF, convert it into a presentation where you can actually get slides, you can get Q&A, you can get a study guide, and you can get a little podcast. And that can be shared out to students. I use it, and I'll explain when we get there how I use it in my classes. And then even some study tools. So the Turbo AI is one that I just started to develop. Students where they can actually get something that an instructor has sent out, and they can put it in here, and it will create slides, podcasts, video overlays. It'll give them study tools that will help them with testing. And then it's even used, there's even some of these tools that are designed to be able to use for like writing studios. I know nationally that when you hear writing studios, this actually came, did you watch, Beth, the AI in higher education? Have you had a chance to do the one on writing yet through the AAUP? No? So there's one in there, and it was talking about writing, and they were talking about the use of AI generators like chatbots to be able to help students. They can put their paper in there, they can generate a response to their draft, tell them where they're short on where they need to beef things up. So it's kind of like going to a writing studio. But the good part about this type of thing is it gives you 24/7 access to support tools so you can have student success. And then we're going to start talking about the concerns of AI in the classroom and in higher education. What are some of those concerns that we're seeing out there? We immediately want to go to integrity. We always want to go there, and we don't talk about, yes, that can be, but what can you do to support students in being able to make it a positive tool through your policies and honor codes rather than just making it restrictive, right? And then we're going to be talking about some of the ethics around it, like what are the AI checkers? What do they look like? What do they tell you about AI checkers? AI policies, classroom policies, those types of things. Okay, so when we talk about the evolution of AI, it just didn't happen in 2020. It actually, AI started to develop in the 1940s and 1950s. It then moved on, and there's a whole lot of information in here. I didn't want to just giving you a spot of, it's been around for a while. In the 1970s and 80s, AIs really started to evolve. So by the time we hit the 2000s to 2010, we started seeing large database, powerful computing, and the first self-driving car that was based on AI. And then again, now we're going into the present day where we have image recognition, language translations, commercial applications, virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa. I was waiting for somebody's Alexa to go off or Siri to go off the minute I did that. It's happened, right? Healthcare, finances, robotics, universities have courses in AI. So it's just continuing to grow. I'm in the counseling profession, and we're starting to see a lot. One of the simulators I'll show you here, we're actually seeing case notes. So when you go into a counseling session, after the counseling session's over, a clinician will usually take case notes. And now they're showing HIPAA-compliant case note generators that will actually, so let's say the counselor's just talking to you and really not doing an evidence-based model, it will not record the chat, the coffee talk. It'll only do the evidence-based model. And supervisors can now use this with their clinicians to say, hey, you're really not growing with your client, and here's the reason why. So it can be help for supervision as well as case notes that are required, ethical requirements of the law. So those are some of the things we're going to be looking at. Okay, getting back to how they can be used in higher education. When we looked at personalized learning, I know that's a glob of words, it's so anti-PowerPoint, but I just didn't want to have a ton of slides, so we'll go with that. So if you look at the first one, personalized learning through adaptive course platforms that adjust to students' pace and needs, LMS type things, we're getting ready to move to Ultra. And one of the things that we use in Blackboard Ultra is it has AI generators to support everything from course development all the way to simulators, like type simulators, not the one, and I'll explain that here shortly. Then you can use it for automated, and again, I'm giving you what they can be used for, not saying that it should be used, could be used, should be restricted for use. I'm just telling you how it's being used on the national front at many universities that are out there. So automatic grading for quizzes, assignments, short answer questions, saving instructors time. This is a big hot topic. It's even a hot topic in what's called WCT, which is called WICHE, Center for Educational Technology. There's a big blog going on right now in terms of policies on grading by instructors. So if anyone's ever interested, see me or send me an email and I'll send you some of the conversations that's going on regarding to that. Virtual tutors and chat boxes. This is amazing because 24/7, like I just told you, if I'm home and I'm in my dorm or I'm in my house and I don't have access to student support services that are available live and human, I can go into some kind of tutor, some kind of help, and be able to get those needs met. I remember when I was director of AITC, one of the things that we started to do is we brought in these interesting thing called whiteboards and symposium where you can actually write on it. And what we were doing for mathematics, what we learned in math is students can go to a math class, students who struggle with math, they can go into a math class and in front of the instructor can follow what the instructor's doing and really get it. And then they go home, and a lot of times if they miss one step, it doesn't come out right, and they fall behind. So without AI, our first thing that we used to do is the instructor would sit in a room, be recorded, doing the whole lecture, the math, the formulas, and it would be recorded, and then it would be available to students so that they could go back and watch, be reinforced, and be successful in their learning. Well, now there's AI chat bots out there that you can actually just plug in and it will actually write it out for you while you're doing it. Some people start questioning, is that cheating? Is that, but if it's helping you to learn, not to just get the answer, that's the end result there. Predictive analytics, if you can look at high-risk students, be able to use AI to determine where your high-risk students are, you can help improve retention rates. If you start to use it as a curriculum recommendation, so a student needs to understand what their interests are, areas they want to go, career kind of decisions, it can be used for that. Streamline administrative tasks like scheduling, admissions, financial aid, letter writing, recommendations, those types of things can be helpful. One person at the training that I went to, he said, it's better to use some form of AI than to stare at a white piece of paper wondering even where to start. We've seen doc students, and I'm not talking here, the doc students here, but we've had doc students that have used it in higher education. When they're struggling with their title for a dissertation, they can put in their title and say, give me different variations to try to figure out which is the best title for a dissertation type thing. Rather than just trying to work through it for days and trying to go back to your advisor to figure it out, you can actually get started. It can help enhance accessibility tools like captioning, text-to-speech, Plod. There's a device out there called Plod. It's just a little small device that you can just take with you in meetings. You turn it on and it transcribes everything that's going on in that meeting. So you can actually use it in your class. So you could take it in a classroom. If you have some accessibility needs, you can record that lecture on your Plod, take it back to the Turbo, one of the technologies that we're going to look at, Turbo AI, and it will transcribe it and turn it into a lecture, and turn it into your notes, and turn it into a study guide to be able to help you in accessibility needs. You can use it for plagiarism detection. This is the big one because they're not all accurate. You got to really be careful when you're creating policies where you're going to be using checkers, because there's been lawsuits, several lawsuits where students have sued because they were challenged in it and they were actually, it was their writing. I will use a plagiarism detector, but I don't use it and say, you've done this. Sometimes if I start to see something happening, I personally allow my students to use AI in my classroom. I actually have a statement in there that says you can use AI to wordsmith, you can use it for tone, you can use it for grammar, but anytime you use it, you need to cite that you used it, and you need to keep the original if I ever ask you to submit your original, so that I know that you've used it. Otherwise, then I will challenge you and say, it looks like this was not human. It doesn't look like it's human written. Can we have a conversation and talk a little bit more about what that looks like for you? But it's never designed to sit there and say, you're going to be in trouble because you used it. If you're using it and you're using it wrong, then let's talk about how you can use it in a productive, positive way. Intelligent feedback systems like writing and skill development. There's actually programs out there for reading, for like writing studios, where you put your paper in and it gives you that feedback that you need. And support for faculty like course design, module design. The one thing that you talk about, the importance of anytime you use a chat box, anybody use it, never ask like ChatGPT to give you the citations, because it lies and it will make them up. And so that's where a lot of students get caught, is I need references too, and there's all these references that are not even real. So it's important to be aware of that. Language translation, we're going to be talking about that, and simulated environments. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So let's look at these examples real quick in terms of it. So I'm going to get out of here, and let me show you a few of the technologies that we're... Okay, so the first one, let's look at Jen. It's called Hey Jen. So we talk about a language translator. So I was telling Jeremy and Jared earlier so let's say Dr. Tanberg, our president, likes to do videos. And let's say he has a video out there that he wants to share with multiple different groups out there. And he wants to speak in their native language. So what I did 2 videos. I did one for my family, and the one I did one for here. I want to just make this clear. I do not know Spanish. I should. Everyone tells me I should. But I don't. I was raised in that generation where parents weren't teaching because of issues that occurred back in the 60s and 70s. So I didn't. So what I did was, the way this program works is you create a video. I created this video in Zoom. I just did a really short video. I created it in Zoom, and then I uploaded it into HeyGen. The reason I'm not doing it here to show you because it takes time to process, okay? So what I did was, so let's take this first one, and all I did is, what it does is it takes my video, converts it to the language that you decide to use it in, and then it's even in your voice. So when you hear this,
hola familia, solo quería compartir una nueva tecnología que aprendí en la capacitación en la que estuve sobre IA. Quería que supieran que son parte de mi corazón. Los quiero mucho y espero verlos a todos pronto. Así que, adiós. Dense.
anyone know Spanish in here? Did I do okay? All right. So, and then I just did another one. I won't play the whole thing. This one's a little bit longer. I did this one literally right before I came here.
Hola a todos y bienvenidos a la serie de conferencias de la facultad. Aprecio que estén aquí hoy para tener esta conversación sobre la IA. Más importante aún, cómo se utiliza la IA en la educación superior.
Okay, sound like my voice? So, yeah, but it's still pretty good, right? What's that?
Your lips are saying Spanish.
Saying the same thing?
They're saying the Spanish words. It makes your lips look.
Yeah, the lip sync. So when you set this up, you can set it up with lip sync or not with lip sync. So you can set it up as just audio or many different variations of how you want to do that. So that can be used for translators. What do y'all think? Anyone have any thoughts about that? Yeah.
Would that help us on expand our online programs to the wider world?
It could. It absolutely could, because what I could do is I could create that same lecture in both English and Spanish or French or Italian or whatever. The whole list, the list was huge in regard to that. So it could be used at higher education. It could be used at K-12 to be able to expand that. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
Don't you need a Spanish speaker to check it?
You probably.
I mean, you really do, and you wouldn't want to send it out there with the state.
Absolutely. And that's why I had to ask whoever knew, did it seem fairly accurate? And my recommendation would be to have somebody, because I can sit there and I can hire somebody to translate for me in their voice, but it's not me and it's not my, the genuineness of what I'm trying to say. That first one I did, talking to my family when I first discovered this, is I wanted them to see what I was really wanting to say. And if you have a translator, it can get lost in translation. So I appreciate that, and I agree that the importance is to make sure you're checking before you send something else.
I just want to say that I think for me, for being bilingual and knowing Spanish, that it wasn't really choppy. You can't really tell. So
It's-
it did a great job.
It sounded really smooth, huh? Awesome. Thank you.
That's impressive.
Thank you. Oh,
I imagine that it will get more sophisticated, right? So I'm thinking of like Italian, and there's like a textbook Italian form of language, but it's more like regional, right? So like anytime I've gone there, like I can be speaking Italian in Rome, but it's way different in like Tuscany.
right. And that's an important statement that you say, because I do remember back when you were working with Eva, and you were also, I think, were you here when Luis was here? Luis Trejo? Or was that a little bit before? Okay, so Luis was his dad, and he was a longtime faculty member here, taught Spanish in our community, well known. And, there's a difference of San Luis Valley Spanish as opposed to other areas. And so it's not going to be perfect. The dialect's going to be different. But as you say, it seemed fairly streamlined. So it seemed like you could still get something good out of that. I noticed that the president has been writing messages out there, and at the very bottom lately, he's been putting a Spanish translation. This would give him an opportunity, or admissions group an opportunity, now that we're actually going to be starting to develop a student exchange system, that I could see endless possibilities for us to be able to hit anyone, and even our recruiting for our target audiences to be able to get to the parents who may be for our first-gen students who may have parents that are monolingual, and you can have an opportunity from them to feel connected to the institution, or even an instructor to do that. So that's one of them. Here's another thing that I'll show you. Yes? So the first one that was really short, where I was talking to my family, that one took about a minute and a half, and the longer one took about 5 minutes. So I venture to guess if I was doing a lecture for class, and best practices in online is that your lecture shouldn't be any more than 15 minutes. If they're more than 15 minutes, you need to have a part 2, part 3, part 4. That's going to take a little bit more time. And I'm going to show you a time translation here. What's that?
Do you envision a time when it could be done immediately?
Oh, absolutely. Let me. It's kind of funny. So back in 2004, I was doing the online. In 2000, I was doing online programs. 2000, and I was teaching in Counselor Ed at the time. And back then, we didn't have online. We hadn't started our online program, so we were still going to Grand Junction, Durango, Pueblo, and Canyon City, as well as La Junta, weekly. So we were jumping in a car Tuesday or Thursday if it was close enough, and you taught class. Or on the weekends, you would do the class. And then we went to what was called PicTel, picture television. That's where you had to be in a room, and everybody, the class had to be in a room, and then I would be here with my class, and there would be a class in Grand Junction, and we started doing it that way. And I remember one time going to my chair at the time, Dr. Susan Verheely, and I told her, I said, you know what, I want to invent. I had all these ideas but didn't have money or the ability to do it. But I said, one day we're going to have this hologram where I can stand in this room here, and I will be in Grand Junction, Durango, and Pueblo at the same time, teaching the same class, and I'll be able to see and do that. And lo and behold, they have that now. They finally they're here. So it's, 25 years later, but it is here. So the answer is yes. As you're speaking, it will, as the technology gets faster, it will get easier, and it'll get a lot faster. And I'll explain that with one of the technologies I'm going to show you. Let's do this one. This is called Notebook LM. Yes?
So just some feedback. I was doing some translation work with 11 Labs, which seems similar to your AGen, and a 30-minute chunk of video took 5 minutes to process. And when you consider how much time it takes a translator, that quickly reduces the amount of labor necessary, even if they're still there as an editor proof checking.
Oh, okay. So it's coming along. Excellent. And it's going to be, even as it continues to get better, technology gets better, it's going to get a lot more streamlined. Yeah. Is it work smarter, not harder kind of mentality that we need to get to? And, I grew up in a different generation where it's harder to embrace these changes, but when we can get something quicker that can support, the people that we're around, our colleagues, as well as, students, peers all over, it's a supportive technology. This next technology is called Notebook LM. And I'm actually going to process this so you can see the time, but it's going to be a short one. So in counseling, in Colorado, we have what's called mandated reporting. And in Arapahoe County, there was a school shooting. And as a result of the school shooting, there was a law that was passed, and it's called the Claire Davis Act. I'm teaching an ethics class right now, and we were talking about the Claire Davis Act, and I wanted to be able to provide my students. So in my class, when I do Notebook LM, I have I take a PDF, so you can take a PowerPoint presentation or any PDF, drop it in Notebook LM, and it will create a lot of resources for you. Because it's new in the technologies that I'm using in AI, I always come clean with my students and say, you're not required to do this, or listen to this, or use the resources that I give you. So I call it for fun. So I'll say so-and-so, the name of this would say Claire Davis Act for fun, to show that you can use it if you choose to. When I first started that, the students, I didn't know how my students were going to react, because I'll share, when we do talk about ethical considerations, I will share some of their concerns. But one week, I didn't do it because there wasn't a PowerPoint that week. And I got emails saying, where's our podcast? Where's our podcast? You know, I go walking with my dogs and listen to the lecture. I go do this, and I wanted to hear it. And so I'm going to take this one. I'm going to, you go to Notebook LM, you hit create, and then all you have to do is take any file. So I'm going to go over here to this file, the Claire Davis stack. I'm going to drop it in here. It's going to start processing everything. And then you're going to see over here deep dive. So I call mine deep dive fun. I'm going to go here and hit generate. And it's going to start generating the process. And if you notice, the audio overview is going to be here. This is the podcast. When you come down here, you can also generate a study guide. So if you have your notes from your instructor on like a pre-test study guide that they give you or some kind of, and they give it to you in a PDF, or if you take it, if they hand it to you in a paper, which they don't do paper anymore, but if they handed it to you paper, you could take your phone and take Adobe scan it to a PDF and upload it in here. And then you can actually generate a study guide. You can generate a Q&A, and then when you get done, you will have, the scroll bar isn't here, so you would have, like, here's the questions, and when you pop them up, here it automatically already generated you a Q&A for the Claire Davis Act. And so it's all taken care of for you. Okay? Okay, that's how long it took to process that video. Or and now it's created a podcast. So I'll play it. It's a 5-minute, from that Claire Davis Act sheet that I put in there, which was one page.
Today we're getting into the Claire Davis School Safety Act in Colorado.
That's right.
We've got the law itself, the text, and some recommendations that follow.
Yeah, from the state's resource center.
So our goal here is to really unpack what this means for school safety and, well, accountability.
Exactly. Think of it as focusing on when a school district or even a charter school might be legally responsible if violence happens.
Okay.
Because normally public bodies have governmental immunity, some protection from.
All right. What do you think? Yeah.
One of the ways I've been using it, because I'm continuing my education as well, is the notes I write for the books I'm reading and the course material. I'll take a screen capture and then feed it in to synthesize into a study guide on top of the notes I've already made.
Absolutely, and that's the whole piece. And if you don't have, if you don't have a way to convert to a PDF, you can download the free Adobe scan, and it'll convert things to a PDF in a pretty good way. That's exactly what it should be designed for. And we have a lot of students that they have a lot of things that they're doing, and sometimes it's easier to put that on your phone, and then you can listen to it while you're doing other things, while you're going on a walk, while you're going on a run, and you're just also hearing that. Or even when you're going to bed, you can listen to the lectures that have been generated that were outside the classroom. So Beth, you had a reaction to it.
I've got pretty good at detecting AI voices, but the way the two AI voices interacted with each other, they sounded like radio DJs.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna get, for better or worse, I'm not an AI probe at all, but for better or worse, it's gonna get to where we're really going to have to train our ears and our eyes to know what is real and what is AI.
Absolutely. And this is the free version. If you actually do the paid version, there's other voices in there. The other famous voices that you can actually use in your podcast that are in there. I just always use the same. They're used to the voices of them. The other piece that you can do is when you're generating this, when you go back to the generator, you can, I think, let me see if I can. Oh, okay, so you saw that. You saw when I hit the little dot here, there's your download, and you upload it into Blackboard, and then you have your thing. But if you delete it, let me see if I delete it. When you hit customize, you can put, like when I do customize, I might say, for today's lecture, also remember you have something due. after the lecture, go to the discussion board. Please mention Dr. Manzanares and that this is part of his ethics class 555. And then those podcasters will incorporate that into their podcast. So they'll say, this is for Dr. Manzanares' 555 ethics in counseling class, and he wanted me to remind you that you need to do the discussion board and it's due by this day. So you can put in all those.
So I'm really not looking to be a party pooper, but and I'm not against any of this stuff at all. But I can't help but having a concern come to mind right now, just knowing how some students are. So I don't know if I should ask this question later or now.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask it now. Later, we're going to be getting into ethical considerations because I'm showing you the types of technologies, and then we're going to be talking about the concerns and the issues and how do we remedy those concerns and issues.
Okay, so I guess I'll express my question through an analogy. Let's say one academic subject, I'm just going to analogize it to like the whole Star Wars saga. And if someone chooses not to watch the whole Star Wars saga and just does this to it and just has these AI chatbots talk in like, I don't know, a 10-minute summary of it, yes, they're going to get a lot of the subject matter, but they're going to miss a lot in that 9-hour narration of deep layers of the content, but there's no substitute. You can't really fast forward that. So I know this applies to some subjects more than others. I come from a psychology background, so I'm just wondering, this isn't really like a plagiarism thing, but it's more like, I think if people, I could be wrong, but I think if some students, not all, get addicted to this, they might miss out on the deep layered, multi-level narration of prolonged immersion into something. So I just wonder what your thoughts are if you just analogize the Star Wars thing to like any humanities subject.
Yeah, I think the most important thing I need to do, and please don't throw anything at me, but I haven't watched any of the Star Wars, but I understand what you're getting at. There's a lot of these considerations that you have to look at. We can always try to figure out ways, to say you need to watch the whole show. Shouldn't crib notes. When I went to college, we used to go to the bookstore and take crib notes just to get what we need to do. And learning takes place, and it's based on the decision on the learner to decide how much and how deep they want to go into their learning. It doesn't matter what I do. I remember back in the late 90s, we used to, when I was in the admissions office, there was a huge crisis with the SAT that they caught a student who was able to take their number 2 pencils and they were able to put coding on it for all the answers, and they had almost 100% on the SAT based on that coding. You'd go to Sylvan's Learning Center to do your proctored ACT and SAT, and they used to say, they make comments, don't wear a dress, because they have cameras under the tables to make sure people aren't cheating. Cheating's been going on from day one. When I talked about that first pencil in 1630s, I'm sure there was still things that were going on there. So what we try to do, what I do with my students are, you can go into my ethics class, I'm going to give this to you, but when you look at my lectures that are out there, they're long. And if you go beyond, if you don't want to do that, what's going to happen is at the end of our program, you're going to have a comprehensive exam. So by doing this is a support, it's a scaffold, it's not a replacement. And we should be having conversations with our students about the importance, and going back to with AI, there's great responsibility. It's just not out there, but you need to make sure. The next technology I'm going to show you is about skills for counseling. And it doesn't replace a counselor. It doesn't replace a client, because there's still the human element and the relationship element that occurs. So I completely validate what you're saying. But it's no different than creating a crib note or creating what we used to run down to the bookstore and pull it up to try to write a report to get what we need. We're only cheating ourselves as learners and as learners in anything that we do. So that's just kind of my thought on that. Okay. The next technology, because I want to get to the other pieces out there, I'll just do this one real quick. This is called SimCare. And I was a consultant, or still a consultant on this project. We have an issue in counselor education that when we have students that are wanting to be counselors, it is noted that in some research, it can show up to 80% of faculty believe that their students aren't clinically ready when they're getting ready to go into their sites. And because we only see them for a short period of time, a lot of it is practice that goes out when they're out at their sites. When we're trying to teach them skills, when we're trying to teach them diagnosis, when we're trying to teach them suicide risk and risk assessment, let's take suicide risk assessment for a second. If I have a client, I may be a counselor that could go 10 years without seeing a suicide risk assessment, just in the particular area that I'm particularly in. And the time that I do need to do it, am I going to be ready? What's it going to look like? Now, I can't emulate the relationship that I'm going to have with the person, but I can get a little bit more skill ready to be a little bit more comfortable and confident when it really does happen. So if I want to diagnose somebody, I can't diagnose them unless I'm sitting across from them. But if I was able to practice in a diagnosis class and then be able to then sit with an AI simulator, I can practice that AI and then I can go out and have a better time with it. So this one's called SimCare. And with SimCare, you could just go through here and you just find a client. And I can go in here and, so let's say I pick James here. I like James. I've been working with him for a while, so I do like James. And I'm then it's gonna tell me what I need to do. I am gonna enable the information that I need. It is recording. And then what I learned earlier is that I need to hit proceed. I don't know why. What's that? Oh yeah. There it is. Thank you. I forgot that. Okay, so what I do now is, this is my client. His name's James. This is what I was telling you about, is the technology isn't quite up there yet. So you can take, it's a little bit wonky if I try to take a voice with like a human looking avatar, and have the voice sync up. The recording was able to do it, and it was post-production that you were able to see. When you're doing live simulation, they just haven't been able to take the body movements with avatar with the voice. So right now with SimCare, we just have the picture of the person. You have you as the counselor in training, and then you can actually have the conversation with them. And I say, James, I'm sorry you've been hearing everything I've been talking to this group. I have a group with me today, and I wanted to demonstrate what we're doing. And do you mind if we have a conversation with them here in the room with us?
Well, I reckon I don't mind chatting with y'all here. It's a bit different, but I'm game if it'll help folks understand what I'm going through. Just a bit nervous, I guess, talking in front of a group, but I suppose it might be good to get some of this off my chest. So where should we start then?
Yeah, why don't you tell me what brings you here today?
Well, I'm struggling with this whole shared custody thing. Feels like I'm missing out on my kids' lives, and it's weighing on me.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had some major changes in your life, and you're really wanting to make sure that your kids are really connected with you and available with you.
Yeah, that's right. I just want my kids to know they can count on me, But I'm feeling this distance, and it's tough.
Yeah, that's powerful. When you say me, you really raised your voice a little bit about that. So tell me a little bit more about that when you say you want them to be looking at you.
Well, I guess I want my kids to see me as more than just the fun dad. I want them to know I'm here for them, through thick and thin. Sometimes it feels like I'm just trying too hard, and I worry they won't see me as someone they can rely on when things get tough. That connection's real important to me.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a time that when you felt like you were just a fun dad and you want to be that serious dad that you can be there for them, somebody they can run to when they need something.
Exactly, that's it. I reckon I just don't want them to see me as only there for good times. I want them to feel comfortable coming to me with their worries and knowing I'll be there to support them. It's hard though, because I feel like there's this gap.
Okay, so that
You suck, James.
what's that?
You suck, James.
When I was actually doing the testing, I have to have 5 impressions before it'll actually give me the analytics. So that's why I was just trying to do something so we could get to that point. It's interesting that you say that. When I was doing the testing, there was a client in there and she was talking about some, cultural considerations. She's having a baby and cultural consideration, not being good enough, not being a good enough mom. And I really had to remind myself that I was working with an avatar because I didn't want to it was like 5 minutes in, there were little 5-minute spurts. And I'm like, I need to finish this. I need to end this. And I'm like, it's just AI. If I get back in, they'll just keep moving forward. So what happens here is when you do, in this particular one, when you have you have a transcript, you can actually check for basic skills. So, appropriate delivery, yeah, you shouldn't be doing it in front of a bunch of people. And then, my pacing, I was trying to get this done quickly. So, but, I did hit most of the areas that I needed to. And then I can go into more detailed things. So that's a simulator. So we've talked about different pieces. This is a simulator that students could use. This company, it's called Soma Labs. They actually started in the medical field to help doctors with bedside manner, to help them with diagnosis. And then they've adapted it to, when they reached out to me back in the fall, they were able to adapt it to counseling. And now they're looking at social work. But one of the other pieces to this is if we were ever to adopt it here, now that we have Blackboard Ultra, I could take one of those cases. I went the other day and I said, you need to do this. If I took a case like James, I need to be able to cut that as an embed code. Then I can go into Ultra and import it into Ultra. So when I'm doing as a class, I can say, let's say I'm doing a diagnosis. I could say in the diagnosis class, I want you to diagnose this client. And they could go in there and do the diagnosis and give them feedback to see if they were right on, if they were missing pieces, how they could do better. And then I could go into that video. You saw it recording me. I could go in and see to make sure they were hitting the skills that they were needing to hit. This last one, I'm not going to do anything with. I just wanted to show you it. This is the one that's called Turbo Learn. And Turbo Learn is the one that's a student support one, where you go and are you an undergraduate student, graduate student, working professional, teacher, professor? So you selected the one that you are, and then you can put like lectures in there, and then it'll generate a voice lecture to it so you can hear the lecture, study guides, those types of things in there. And this is new. I just figured this out. I haven't actually played with it. That's why I'm not going to demonstrate it. So that's kind of, so any thoughts on what you just saw?
That SimCare one could be used for evil too.
What's that?
That SimCare one could be used for evil. I mean, both, not necessarily in a bad way either, but like, you could do like the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
You could give some interesting feedback on that as well.
Right. So when we were testing it, I had to be a really bad counselor. So I was sitting there on my phone. I was looking out the window. I was doing all, it was a student coming up to me and saying, I'm really having a hard time. I'm like, can you hurry? I'm really busy right now. So I was doing everything I could to try to make it, and we were able to figure out what things that it needed. Like the client will now say, are you too busy for me? Should I come back later? So it's trying to adapt to that. And it is generative, but it does not share. It does not, anything that's said. So some of my students said, I don't know if I want to use this because generative AI uses it to learn other things. And this one is encapsulated in its own program. So even though you're not dealing with HIPAA, students still don't want their stuff out there. And that's one of the considerations with the ethics of AI. So when we start looking at the ethical considerations, it's almost like what we were talking about. Students use it to support their learning, but then what are the integrity concerns that we have? What are the concerns of it being used to, find tests, create tests, those types of things, to be able to cut and paste a discussion board rather than using it as a tool to generate ideas that you can then go and create your own around it. And this whole session was not necessarily about the pieces of how to stop it, but how do we adapt it to be a learning support system rather than a you don't use it. And there are areas, and I always believe this, if you come from an area or a school that says you're not going to use it, I just don't want people to go, if you use it, you're going to vaporize. That's all there is to it. And I don't want that belief system, but you can say it's not to be used. CU Law School, when I went to the Colt conference in August, the big topic was AI. Can you hear me? Okay. The big topic was AI, and they were talking about policy. And CU Law was at the conference, and they came up and said, honor codes are working better than policies. And making sure that you're using honor codes to help students understand the importance of what they're learning. So that honor code in counselor education it's here, but you're going to get caught if you decide that you're going to take a shortcut. When you take your comprehensive exam or you take your licensure exam, you're going to get caught. And why would you waste all that money for you to be able to just get through? Because there's that gatekeeping piece of if you can't get licensed, what happens there? And so having those conversations, having the honor code, knowing the policy supports the honor code, and making sure you're able to do that. Now, faculty has the same thing. We can use it for course creation. We can use it for module creation. But now the grading is the big thing. Do you use it for grading? I'm not going to tell you should or not, but I do want to say that your students are expecting you, and they're expecting what you have to say. I use ChatGPT often, and I'll tell you exactly what prompt I use often. Wordsmith for clarity and tone. Wordsmith for clarity, tone, professionalism. Wordsmith for clarity, tone, and an informal response. So I might write something, I may get ready to write an email, and I am going to cut that, paste it into ChatGPT, and it's going to take my response and clarify it in that sense. But I'll be honest with you. I read every single one. I just don't take it, cut and paste it back and just send it out. Because all too often, it changes the way what you're trying to convey and you're trying to say. And so you have to be really aware that you have to read what you're doing. It works great on creating a rubric for a course. You can go and do it and say, can you create a rubric for this course with these categories and these areas that you want? But you can't just generate it, cut and paste it, because a lot of time there's nuances to the different categories that you need to make sure they match what you're trying to do. So it gives you a foundation, but it's not a cut and paste. And that's where we're seeing it happen on instructor side, and we're seeing it happen on student side. They put in a prompt, they don't read the prompt, and then it causes issues. There's a lot of detection pieces out there where they say some faculty will make a small word that they'll make it really a small font, like 0.1 font, that you don't really see it. But when you cut the instructions, so let's say for a discussion board, and that little prompt, that little word's in there, and you put it in the AI picks up that word and it'll throw off the generator, and then it'll give you can tell that they just cut and pasted it. So there are ways that you can do it. Zero GPT is a chat identifier. So you take what. So let's say a student writes something, and I love doing this. I don't challenge students. This is not about students, but I'll take an email that somebody sends me every now and again, or I'll take something out there and I'll cut it and I'll paste it in there, and I just want to see how much has been ChatGPT'd. And I do want to say this. If you're writing like a business letter or you're writing something business, or it can help with a recommendation to help you set out. But if you're going to write something heartfelt, don't use ChatGPT. It breaks trust in terms of what needs to be done. So you need to be aware of that. Yeah.
What about the demonstrated false positives it has, and that it discriminates, and others models like it discriminate against English as a second language?
Absolutely, and that's why I say they're not designed to catch. They're not designed to catch cheating. They can be designed for you to get an idea of how much. I've had students that I'll put it in, and I'll never say you did this or you did that. But when I start to notice that a student's not writing like they normally write, then I might just check, just to kind of get an idea. And like for example, one day I knew the student had done it because they only cut and pasted half of what was done. So I was reading the answer and it just stopped. And I'm like, okay. And it was quite, the writing was, they didn't use the generative AI. You have to use ChatGPT and the thread often so it recognizes your language, the way you write. If you don't do that, it's going to give you something completely different. So that's why I said I use it for fun more than I do in terms of trying to catch someone. I want, like my discussion posts say, you can use it for clarification, for idea, but I want your original and I want your prompt. So they have to tell me they used it, and they have to show me the original if they're going to use it.
That's language. I myself, just to clarify, I'm not an AI folk, but I guess I'm always thinking, how can AI stay in its lane? So just bear with me for a second. Back in the day when we did math, and you know this, like the answers in the back of the textbook. And if we look too quickly, like it's going to destroy the process, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like even using the metaphor or the literal, AI finishing our sentences too quickly. Like I feel if our sentences are completed too quickly in an artificial way, it lacks the individual onus that only comes if I'm struggling, and no one comes with the quick lifesaver, and we might even struggle for like days, and then we find the right way to complete the sentence, figuratively speaking. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts in terms of AI stepping in too quickly sometimes to prevent an individual owning of a complete sentence with a person's individuality?
Oh, it's absolutely that way. And that's why I really liked your comment about keeping AI in its lane. It's designed for a purpose, not for an all. It's not to replace what we're trying to do. It's only to give you that foundation, that understanding, something to give you an example of that. I had to do a speech in the fall, and I know what I wanted to say, but I wanted some kind of format and some kind of organization. So I wrote in the prompt, give me a speech, give me the outline for a speech of the thing that I wanted, and it popped it out. And it didn't give me the speech. What it says is, first you want to thank the people in the room. And it gave me the order of who to thank. But it didn't tell me, but then it would say, tell a little bit about you. Tell a little bit about the importance of why you're here. And then I was able to put my words and my language into it, and it took away a lot of time and created a lot more organization for me. It's been a real help. ChatGPT and Grammarly has been a really big help for me. So I do have dyslexia. And so one of the things that was always really difficult for me is when I write, I have to read and read and read and read. And now I can write, put it into ChatGPT. It will clarify things, and I can go back and make sure that the tone is there, what I want and I'm trying to convey, and then I'll use it or choose not to use it. And there's been many times that I just said, it's not what I wanted, I'm just going to use. And I've been doing this long enough, and through repetition, that my writing, spelling, grammar is pretty on. And so I don't use, it doesn't make a lot of changes, but every now and again it gets radical. I got in an argument the other day with ChatGPT because it kept changing what I wanted to do. And I said, stop it. And it said, I am sorry, I was just trying to enhance what you were doing. Huh?
So every Adams student has the exact same attitude you just expressed in the past few minutes. That would be golden, but we know they don't. So I guess like that's
Yeah, and I do validate your concern. I really do. We talk about that old quote, and it's not going to be perfect. This when I was younger, I was smart, so I thought I'd change the world. When I got older, I got wise, so I decided to change myself. My 25-year-old me probably would have a different belief system to this. My X amount of years of me looks at what we're talking about. But that's why it's important. That's why the relationship, as much as I'm a counselor, even in my teaching, it's important to have the relationship. And luckily enough, we have a program, even though it's as large as it is, our class sizes are only 12 to 22, and so we're able to develop that. But I totally validate, and I don't have those answers yet. And I don't have but what I do have the answers is what we got to do is try to do things like creating policy considerations and making sure that our policies are going from the institutional up, that they're not so restrictive. So then we can go down to the school, which they're more narrow. Then we go down to a department, if it's a department, and then we go down to the classroom. So you don't go up here and say, nobody uses it. What you create is the standards that you would like each department to have considerations about. Then you go into the actual school itself and say, okay, as a school, we're going to live this way, and this is what we want out of it. And faculty here? What area? Psychology. Oh, that's where I started in the psych program. And counselor ed and psych used to be together. And then when we do that, then we go into our course policies. And what I believe in is if they go wide to low, and down here it gets restrictive, that's fine. Okay? I'm going to share a couple of unique things towards the end, just real quick. I know we're running out of time, but this is just a sample course policy. If anyone's interested in it, send me an email. It's markmanzanares@adams.edu, and I'll send you my course policy. I'll even send you my discussion statement that I make that shows that. And what it basically says is if you're going to use it, you're going to cite it. If you're going to cite it, you're going to have it available if I need to have it. And when you go out there to all the different policies out there in the world, there are so many different. I had 87 pages of syllabus policies that was shared with me at one of my trainings of just everything from you're going to vaporize to you can do it, I don't care. And so there's different variations of that. A couple of things, little interesting tidbits. This just came out. When you say thank you to ChatGPT, it wastes millions of dollars. Millions of dollars out there. The CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, said that he spends tens of millions of dollars of electricity because people say please and thank you to their ChatGPT. And the US is the #1 for being polite. Can you get that? So when I had my argument with my ChatGPT, I was just wasting a lot of money. Because every time it responds, it does need to do that. And ChatGPT queries, it takes 10 times more energy to have a conversation, to have a response from ChatGPT than it does to just go to the Google search. Here's another piece is research shows that 1 billion kilowatts of hours of electricity on average every year are used to run an AI chatbot. That equates to $139 million of energy costs to run a chat AI. My students, when they wanted to use it, there was a lot of environmental considerations. I come from counselor education, which is a social justice oriented field. And we had a lot of students that says, I don't want to use your simulator because it wastes electricity, creates a carbon footprint, and it wastes a lot of water. It takes a lot of water to cool the servers. It takes 1,408 milliliters of water, which is equivalent to 316.9 bottles worth to generate a 100-word email. And it takes 40 to 50 milliliters of water to generate a 3-word, you are welcome, to just cool that, and the electricity that it uses to cool those processes. So I get a lot of students that say, I don't want to use it because I am being climate change oriented and I don't want that to happen. And so those are considerations that you have to do. So thank you very much for being here. I know I took the time. I could have talked so much longer. I had so many other, I love these conversations and these things to happen. I don't have the answers. What I'm doing is being as involved as I can so that I can do better at coming up with answers of, hey, this is what others are doing. And this is what we want to accomplish in student learning. And at the end of the day, it comes as a faculty. What do you want to gain? How do we keep, I love your comment, let's keep AI in its lane, boundaries, because that's where we have to have within our society are the boundaries. And how do we have appropriate boundaries? Because it's not going away. And we need to be able to not only teach people how to use it, we need to teach them when they get out in the world how they're going to use it. Okay? So thank you, appreciate it. Here, Mrs.
Syllabus policy,
Uh-huh.
because that's kind of what we're trying to create 3 different types.
Oh, okay.
Chaos-centered, air resistant, and then something in between. So
Okay, excellent, thank you.
You mentioned faculty using it for grading. How do you think that interfaces with FERPA?
So that's a good point, and